Good evening, friends. Meeting again in the session of Stuart Close philosophy, and we were discussing regarding the symptomatology chapter from the Stuart Close. Symptomatology is very important thing because unless and until you have to understand, you will understand exactly what type of symptom it is. It is not possible to reach to the right remedy. And that's why he has started with the importance of symptomatology. What is symptoms? He defined the symptoms. It is the external manifestation of the internal essence of the disease. And then he explains about two types of symptoms. The first variety is subjective and another objective. Subjective symptoms are symptoms which are felt by the patient and not observable to an observer is called as subjective symptoms. Objective symptoms are symptoms which are felt by the patient as well as observable to an observer are called as objective. From homeopathic standpoint of view, subjective plays more vital role than the objective symptoms. And that's why in homeopathy, we used to give lot of importance to subjective because those individualizes the disease. And thereafter, he started explaining about the concept of totality of the symptoms and importance of totality of the symptoms. Hahnemann has defined symptom totality of the symptoms in the seventh aphorism. It is an outwardly reflected picture of the internal essence of the disease, that is, of the affection of vital force. But here, exactly what he wants to say is explained by Kent, and Kent says it is the sum of all characteristic symptoms is called as the totality of symptoms. Boning Hussein have given a different definition. He says that it is sum of all complete symptoms is called as totality of symptoms. Ultimately, unless and until symptom becomes characteristic, it doesn't have a value. So in your case, if there is a numerical totality, but which doesn't have meaning and whole totality is of a vague character, it doesn't have, we cannot reach to the right remedy. But if we get a single symptom, but which has location, which has sensation, which has modality, which has concomitant, and all things makes that symptom characteristic enough, then that symptom can define the individual. And those are very essential from homeopathic point of view. So after explaining this totality, he started explaining about the importance of characteristics and keynotes. And he has given the reference of paragraph 153 from the aphorism, where Hahnemann have explained the importance of these characteristic symptoms. And he explained over there that more striking, singular, uncommon, and peculiar characteristic signs and symptoms of the case are chiefly and almost solely to be kept in the view. So these are very important, whether the case may be acute or whether case may be chronic. These are the symptoms which guides you towards the right remedy. These are the symptoms which defines that injury. And that's why too much emphasis should be given to such types of symptoms in your case. And we have finished one more paragraph after that. This seems a sufficiently clear description of what Hahnemann meant by characteristic symptoms. And eight term has been subject of much discussion and many have differed as to what constitutes a characteristic. And we have to start with new paragraph. Confusions arouse and still exist through the inability on the part of many to reconcile the teaching of this paragraph with the apparently conflicting doctrine of the totality of symptoms as the only basis of true homeopathic prescription. These have taken refuge either in mechanical symptom covering, already referred to, as fulfilling their conception of the totality, or in what is known as keynote prescribing, which, as they practice it, means prescribing on some single symptom which they perhaps whimsically regard as the keynote of the case. When Hahnemann have explained about this peculiar, singular, characteristic symptom, uncommon characteristic symptom should be there. Hahnemann said these such types of symptoms should be there in your totality. If they are present, then you can reach to the right remedy. These are very essential things. He doesn't mean that you should have only one symptom. He has given the importance to it that totality of the symptoms should consist of such types of symptoms. But many have taken a meaning out of that. Only a single symptom is there, and which you can prescribe on the basis of that, and to which they labeled by the name of keynote prescribing. But many times this keynote prescribing fails if you prescribe only on a single symptom. But if a symptom which has a complete understanding, a characteristic sensation, characteristic modalities, characteristic concomitant, so it becomes whole. And if in your case at least 3 such types of symptoms are there, then it becomes rather a fixed tool. Then Kent has said your stool should have at least 3 legs to be stable. In the similar manner, there should be at least 3 characteristics to define an individual. And this is, he has rightly said. The fundamental mistake here has been in the failure to distinguish between the numerical totality and the related and logical totality, as already explained. And many of us doesn't know the difference between numerical totality and exactly the logical totality. Numerical totality means you have hundreds of symptoms, numerical totality, but all are vague. You cannot reach to the any remedy. But if you have 3 or 4 symptoms, but which defines the individual, then those symptoms are very, very important in that totality, which defines directly a remedy. So unless and until you get such types of symptoms in your case, it is not possible to get a right remedy. And this is what he wants to explain over there. Both of these misapprehensions should be recognized and corrected. The real keynote system, as taught and practiced by late Dr. Henry N. Guernsey, but perverted by many, does not conflict with the doctrine of totality of symptoms, nor does it fall short of complying with Hahnemann's injunction to pay most attention to the peculiar and characteristic symptoms of the case. It is, in fact, strictly Hahnemannian. The truth is that Dr. Guernsey simply invented a new name for the old Hahnemannian idea. Now he takes the help of Guernsey's keynotes. It is a big, it is a good book to learn the homeopathy in a proper manner. He has given a materia medica in a keynote fashion. Hahnemann, Guernsey never changed the idea of Hahnemann. He said only one thing, that these are the keynotes which defines the remedy. It is not a single keynote on which you are going to prescribe. You must have such types of keynotes which directly defines the remedy. Same is true with the Allen's keynotes. But what happens many times, many prescribers considers one symptom and prescribes on that. That is a wrong thing. Hahnemann never said such a thing. He said that your totality should consist of such types of symptoms, such types of characteristic symptoms to which you can label by the name of keynotes. And Kent has rightly said there should be at least 3 keynotes in your case taking or in totality, which defines individuality. A synopsis of Dr. Guernsey's keynote method will be of value in this connection. The term keynote is merely suggestive as used in this connection, the reference being to the analogy between materia medica and music. This analogy is shown in the use of other musical terms in medicine, as when the patient speaks of being out of tune, or the physician speaks of the tone of the organism. Disease is correctly defined as a loss of harmony in the function and sensation. The keynote in the music is defined as fundamental note or tone of which the whole piece is accommodated. In the pathology term, the pathognomic symptoms expresses what might be called keynote of the disease, and that which differentiates it from the other diseases of similar character. So now he is explaining what is meant by keynote, and he defines it in comparison with the musical instruments or music. It is a note, basic notes are there. If those notes are properly utilized, the music becomes harmonious. If there is any note which is wrongly utilized, it becomes absolutely disturbed, the harmony of that music. Same is true with the human health. Human health, till it is in harmony, everything is good. When this tone of human harmony is lost, the disease develops. And if you want to bring back again this, then you have to look towards those pathognomic symptoms which comes out, taking the individuality of that individual. There are two varieties of symptoms. One, symptoms which diagnose the disease are based upon common symptoms called as pathognomic symptoms, gives the diagnosis. And at the same time, if those symptoms which defines the individuality, expresses the modalities, expresses the sensations, expresses the concomitant, then those symptoms defines the individuality and defines the remedy. And both symptoms are very important from homeopathic point of view. To find it out, the first variety to diagnose and second variety to diagnose the remedy. In comparing the symptoms of medicines, we find that each medicine presents peculiar differences from all other medicines. These differences by which one remedy is distinguished from another are the keynotes of the remedy according to the Gansi. What he says? In comparing the symptoms of medicines, we find that each medicine presents peculiar differences from all other medicines. What it means? Every remedy has its own peculiarity. For example, if there is an aconite, aconite has its own fear of death, a different way of presentation. Aconite comes to you in a panic state and he comes, doctor, doctor, I will die, please, please help me. He's in a panic state. That is the way of expression of aconite. As compared, the arsenic also has the fear of death, but it never gets expressed in this manner. Arsenic will come and he is in anxious mood and he will ask again and again, doctor, may I get better? Shall I come out of this disease? And there is tremendous anxiety about the disease. The presentation is variable. The peculiarities are different. The fear dominates anxiety in aconite. Anxiety dominates fear in case of arsenic album. And these are the things which you have to understand. These peculiarities, if you are able to catch, then it rather becomes very simple to find it out remedy. And that's why what he says, these differences by which one remedy is distinguished from the another are the keynotes of the remedy according to the Gansi. And keynotes differentiates one remedy from the another. It does not mean that keynote of the case alone is to be made by keynote of the remedy alone, and that other features of the case or remedy are to be ignored. So what he says, it is not like that you forget the rest of the symptoms. Everything should match. It is not only the keynote should match. The keynote is simply the predominating symptom or feature which directs attention to the totality. Its function is merely suggestive. What he is saying over there? Very important entity which he is expressing. Keynote is the predominating symptom of the totality, because of which it is rather easy to differentiate one remedy from another remedy. Its functions is merely suggestive. It suggests, yes, this might be a Kali group, this might be a Calcarea group, this might be a natrum group. A prescription is not based upon keynote, considered as a one symptom, no matter how peculiar it may seem. Its utility lies in this, that when the prescriber has become familiar with these keynotes or characteristics of the remedy, he will be able more quickly to find the remedy in a given case because the field of selection has been narrowed. So keynote is the thing because of which you can immediately think in that specific direction and your field becomes narrow. These are the differentiating features of the remedies. And that's why keynote has a lot of meaning. When he recognizes such a keynote in the symptom of the case, it suggests or recalls to the mind a medicine or medicines having a similar keynote. Reference to the repertory and materia medica will verify and complete the comparison. There is usually something peculiar in the case, some prominent feature or striking combination of symptoms that directs the attention to a certain drug, and this is what Dr. Ganse called a keynote. So he explains exactly what is meant by the keynote. There might be something characteristic enough where two symptoms comes together and which has unique combination. There might be some alternating feature which have characteristic indication. So cheerfulness alternating with sadness, such type of might be symptom. The diarrhea alternating with the mm, diarrhea alternating with constipation. Sometimes rheumatism alternating with the skin complaints. Many such types of features are there which are keynotes so that it becomes rather simple to reach towards the group of remedy which not directly gives you the remedy, but which gives you thinking to go towards certain group of remedy. The misunderstanding and abuse of this method has caused it to fall somewhat to discredit. But considering Guns's keynotes and Hahnemann's characteristics as the synonymous terms, which they are, and making legitimate use of Guns's method, it has a value. So what he says, it has a very typical value. It has a characteristic, Hahnemann's characteristics and Guns's keynote. They are synonymous terminology. And what he explains, both of them are important in order to make the field narrower, but they are not the thing on the basis of single keynote you are going to prescribe. A characteristic or keynote symptom is the generalization drawn from particular symptom by logical deduction. Evidently, the characteristic or peculiar symptoms of the case cannot be determined until a complete examination has elicited all the symptoms of the case, numerical totality, for the purposes of comparing. This living being done, there are various ways of selecting the characteristics. So he is again explaining what exactly mean by the characteristics or keynote symptoms. And these are the symptoms which you can catch from the case. If the patient is there who is having burning in head, he is having burning in palms, burning in soles, and he explains that, yes, doctor, I want to keep all those things in cold water. I always want cold water, then I feel better. It is a keynote where he is having head burning, he is having palms burning, he is having soles burning. So burning better by cold application. That is a logical entity which you can draw from that totality, and then you can make it a keynote so that you can catch a remedy. So he is explaining exactly the importance of it, and because of which it becomes rather simple. You have to use the logic in order to find all those things. Dr. Adolf Lippe illustrated his method in this way. In many cases, he says the characteristic symptoms will consist in a result obtained by deducting all symptoms generally pertaining to the disease with which the patient suffers, and from those elicited by thorough examination of the case. In other words, characteristic symptoms are symptoms peculiar to individual patients rather than the symptoms common to the disease. See, very clearly he is explaining. They are the symptoms which are very specifically related with the individual and not to the disease. They are not the common symptoms of the disease, like appendicitis, where there is a pain in right iliac fossa and there is a vomiting associated, there is a fever associated, not like that. These are the features which are pathognomic symptoms. But if you have in that specific case, patient comes to you with very severe pain in right iliac fossa and he keeps whole pressure of his hand on in right iliac fossa and he stands in front of you, bending over there, keeping his hand over there and he says, doctor, it's too painful. It is just teaching over there. I can't remove my hand. It's aggravated by slightest movement. All those, the symptom becomes characteristic because it has characteristic sensation, it has characteristic modalities, because of which the patient, you are able to reach to the remedy. Otherwise, it is not. Pain in right iliac fossa, you don't go get a right remedy. But if patient explains this in this manner, then you can think it might be bryonia if there is a dryness of mouth associated, if there is characteristic thirst is there, if there is a characteristic constipation, that is hard, large, hard black stools, stony hard stools are there, then you reach, yes, this might be a bryonia because the symptom has become characteristic enough or keynote enough. So this is what the importance of it. In other words, characteristic symptoms are the symptoms peculiar to the individual patient rather than symptoms common to disease. He illustrated this by a case as follows. The patient was attacked by cholera. All the characteristic symptoms of cholera were present. But in this individual case, there was, number one, an unusual noise in the intestines, as if fluid were being emptied out of the bottle. Number two, the discharge came away with a gush. Number three, the discharge came away with a gush. Of what pathological value these symptoms were, we know not. Still, they form part of totality which we must cover. Deducting from the numerical totality of the symptoms, those common to the disease, we were in position of the characteristic symptoms of the patient. We found that those two symptoms are also characteristic of Jatropha curcus, and this remedy at the same time has caused symptoms corresponding to the general pathological condition. Jatropha promptly cured the case. So he has given simple example of a Jatropha. What he has said? The patient is suffering from cholera. Cholera symptoms are there. The rice watery diarrhea, the vomiting, etc. These are common symptoms which never diagnose the remedy. But in this specific case, there are two characteristics. One is the typical noise which is present in the intestine, as if the fluid were being emptied down from the bottle. And number two, the discharge came out with the gush, and because of which it becomes simple to reach to the Jatropha. And Jatropha was given because these are individualizing characteristic features which are related to that individual, not to the disease, and because of which it becomes rather simple to reach to the right remedy. The selection of the curative remedy in this case, therefore, was governed by two symptoms of no known pathological value and of seemingly trifling character. 8. These two symptoms were what gave the case its individuality and unerringly pointed out the curative remedy. So he has explained the importance of those two characteristic symptoms in the case, because of which it was rather easy to find it out a right remedy. This case is beautiful example of the kind work of the for which Dr. Lippe was famous. It illustrates the necessity of being familiar with natural history, symptomatology, diagnosis of the disease. Dr. Lippe could not have decided that these two symptoms were peculiar and characteristic if he had been unfamiliar with the symptoms of cholera. Neither could be, neither could he have selected these two symptoms as peculiar if he had not had the rest of the symptoms before him for comparison. The mistake of arbitrarily picking out some freak symptoms and giving a remedy which has corresponding symptoms should be avoided. Dr. Ganse did not teach prescribing on a single symptom. So he has explained about this Dr. Lippe's case, and where he mentions that in that case, if you know what are the common symptoms of cholera, then it becomes rather easy for you to find it out what are the peculiar symptoms in this specific individual, which are not related with cholera, but which are related to that specific individual. If you are able to catch such types of symptoms, then it becomes rather simple to reach to the right remedy. And this is possible. If you know the common, then you can find it out uncommon. If you know the diagnosis, then it becomes rather simple to find it out uncommon characteristics. And that's why we must have knowledge of disease with which we can acknowledge the common symptoms, and then it becomes easy to find it out the characteristic symptom. So we'll stop over here and we'll continue in tomorrow's session regarding this symptomatology. He has explained it in thorough, and we must learn it by heart so that we can understand more details about the symptomatology. And this, if we understand, then it becomes simple to reach to the right remedy. My suggestion to all of you is that go through the Davidson's medicine book and read it again and again, so that you can get acknowledged with the common symptoms of the diseases, and then it becomes very simple to find it out a right remedy. So that's all for today. Tomorrow we'll meet again with this close philosophy session. And today evening we're going to learn benzoic acid, another remedy which is generally overlooked but which is very useful in specific gouty diathesis. We're going to learn with the cases at 8 o'clock. Be there to learn this remedy at 8 o'clock. So that's all for today. Thanks a lot. If any query is there, you can have a chat. Okay. So good evening, and we'll meet at 8 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.